Tiffany.
Hi, welcome everyone. This session is on identifying journals for publication. So we're going to talk a little bit about some of the tools and resources that we have available through the library that will help you, and just some general information that will be useful for you. Again, like Jason mentioned, this is the last workshop in the Spring Research Workshop series, and we will be back in the fall with a new lineup of workshops. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to turn off my video. I get distracted by it, so we're going to do that. And then if you have questions today, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand, and Jason or Kayla will call on you. So again, in today's class, we're going to discover how you can create a quick list of journal options for your manuscript. You're going to learn about journal matching tools. We're going to review current issues in the scholarly publishing landscape and investigate a variety of options for disseminating your work. Okay, so let's cover a little history about today's topic. So the way we communicate research has changed in profound ways over time. In March of 1665, the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society became the first recognized journal devoted to science in the Western world, publishing letters between researchers on scientific matters. In the 1800s, fields of science and nature were further divided into specialties. These journals were rarely read by the general public. And so, as you can imagine, a huge disruptor in the scholarly communication came with the invention of the World Wide Web. In the late 90s and the early 2000s, Blogger and Wikipedia provided platforms for writing and communicating information to the masses. In the early 2000s, we see the open access movement begin with the Budapest Open Access Initiative and the concept that science communication doesn't belong behind a paywall. So in 2004 through 2006, we see major social media companies form, with Facebook and Twitter coming online. We also see the formulation of PLOS ONE, one of the very popular open access megajournals. And in 2008, the NIH mandates their public access policy for federally funded research. In 2010, the Altmetrics Manifesto came about, which looked at beyond measuring of citations and elevated the importance of shares, views, downloads, and early signs of impact. In 2012, we see the founding of PeerF, F1000 Research, and eLife. So these journals began experiencing with new forms of peer review, new business models, and new funding resources. We could continue, of course, choosing things like the emergence of new social media platforms, responsible metrics movement, the NIH 2026 open access policy, where all of federally funded research will be required to be open access immediately, ChatGPT and AI. Instead of doing that, we're going to just simply reiterate that the ways we communicate about research is ever changing. So one of the biggest players in scientific communication are scientific publishers. They provide the technical infrastructure that journals need to handle manuscript submissions, peer review and revision, copy editing, and publication. The publishers also provide the financial ability for journals to employ editors, to shape, check the articles, and to distribute the finished product to subscribers. So the scientific publishing market is complex and dynamic. Journals change publishers, and publishers acquire and merge with competitors. It likely won't be surprising that the market is largely dominated by 6 large publishing houses. So Elsevier, Wiley Blackwell, American Chemical Society, Taylor and Francis, Springer Nature, and Sage. So the proportion of scientific output published in journals under their ownership has risen steadily over the past 40 years, and you can see on the graph on the slide. And they control more than 50% of the market between them. So we need to dig a little bit deeper, and before we actually start talking about selecting journals and finding journals for to publish in, we need to take a deeper look at the types of journals that publishers create. So while many journals can be categorized based on the particular research field or topic they focus on, there are other ways that you might hear a journal being described. So categorizations of journals might be referring to journals that are owned or sponsored by a society or an association. You might hear about mega journals, which are open access and publish high volumes of research on a broad range of topics each month. There's also categorizations based on how readers can access the content of the journal. So subscription-based journals generally charge libraries or readers a fee to access the content. Open access journals that are free to read, but they may charge author publication fees. There's hybrid journals, also known as open access by choice journals, which are subscription-based, and they might have a selected amount of articles that are freely available if an author pays an open access fee. So we'll talk a little bit about open access later on in the presentation. So types of journal articles. Just as there are many types of journals, there's lots of types of journal articles. The Web of Science maps all articles and indexes from various publishers and journals to a list of 28 generic document types. So you can see here on the screen, it might be an article, a case report, clinical trial letter, meeting review. And it's important to keep in mind that each journal often has its own list of articles. So the Journal of the American Medical Association has 17 different types of journals that it will, types of articles that it will publish. Okay, just as you need to decide on the type of journal article you want to write before you begin your manuscript, you might also need an idea of where you want to publish. So as you draft your article, you will need to comply with the specific author instructions that can differ from journal to journal. In addition, you'll want to keep your target journal in mind and make sure the style, structure, and audience are all a good fit. Once you submit your paper, if the editor thinks that it has potential, they will give it to 2 to 3 experts to judge the validity, the significance, and the originality of your work. After peer review, you'll receive advice from the editor and the reviewer so that you can make careful revisions. And once the article is finally accepted, copy editing is completed and proofs are created. You'll also sign a publishing agreement. So factors that influence where to submit. How do researchers decide where they're going to submit? There are actually many factors to consider. So in 2015, there was a survey done by Nature, and researchers said that the most important factors were the reputation of the journal, the relevance of the journal to the researcher's discipline, the quality of the peer review, and the journal's impact factor. So we will cover almost all of the factors listed in this chart today, but though not necessarily in the order that's provided. And we might skim over a few things based on time, but this presentation, the slides will be posted and the video recording will be posted so that you can go back and refer to it. Okay, so as you can imagine, the first step in choosing where to publish your research is to create a list of journals relevant to your research topic or discipline. So we're going to cover a few different steps or options for doing that and creating that list. So one option for creating a list is to create a search strategy about your topic, if you don't already have one. So this will find journals that have published articles on your topic. This can be a very broad search because we aren't interested in finding exact articles. We really just want articles that have a similar theme or topic. So in this example, I'm going to be using this example today throughout the presentation. So we've drafted a title for our article. Our draft title is Paid Sick Leave and the Psychological Distress, an Analysis of U.S. Workers. So once we perform a search in a few of the different databases that we're going to talk about, we can limit to the last 5 to 10 years. I like to limit to the last 5 so that we can make sure that we're focusing on finding journals that are currently publishing and they have published on this topic in recent history. So in addition, we might want to focus on US-based journals, though there are no really easy filters in the databases for finding that. The country-based filters focus on the location of the authors publishing in the journal, not the geographic focus or location of the journal. And then finally, we may want to limit to English language if you're publishing in English. So you can see on this slide here, I have a few well-known databases that you can use to create a list of journals. So in the interest of time today, we're only going to go over like one of these. But again, we have all of the steps in this slide deck, so you can refer back to it. Okay, so if we went out to Scopus, I'm going to kind of, let me see. Okay, I'm just making sure that you can see this slide pretty well. So Scopus is one of the largest abstract and citation databases, and it includes scientific journals, books, conferences, proceedings, and a wide scope of fields. It has science and technology, medicine, social sciences, arts, and humanities. So Scopus is owned by the publisher Elsevier, and Scopus currently indexes somewhere around 2,500 or 25,000 journal titles. So that number grows every year. Scopus has high quality standards that journals must meet in order to be indexed. And so if a journal begins to fall below those standards, it can be removed from future indexing. So all of the journals indexed in PubMed are also indexed in Scopus. So again, to create, I'm going to kind of walk you through the slide. I'm not going to go into the database and show you. But if you go to this link, it links to the Scopus database. You can do you can put your search strategy in. So whatever search strategy you have. In our example, we are looking at employee benefits or sick leave or sick days, and psychological distress or stress. So if you complete the search strategy, you might want to do a limit to like the last 5 years, and you click search, then it will tell you how many documents the database found. So what you can do is you can either select, Scopus has a new interface. I love it when the databases change their interfaces like on a daily basis. But you can either click on this analyze results right here in the top right hand corner, or you can just scroll all the way down on this filter section. If you scroll to the very bottom, you can export filter counts. And so what that will do is that will export a CVS file that has all the journal titles that had articles published in this for this topic in the last 5 years. So you can get information about the different journals. And like I mentioned, I'm going to kind of give you a brief overview of the different databases, and then you can refer back to the slides for instructions on how to create and generate a list of publication titles. So Web of Science is one of the largest abstract and citation databases and includes scientific journals, books, conference proceedings, and covers fields such as science, technology, medicine, social sciences, and arts and humanities. So Web of Science is independent of any publishing house and currently indexes somewhere between around 34,500 journal titles, and that number grows each year. Web of Science has quality standards that journals must meet in order to be indexed, and if the journal begins to fall below these standards, it can be removed from future indexing. So all of the journals indexed in PubMed are also indexed in Web of Science. And then for PubMed, PubMed is a free resource supporting the search and retrieval of biomedical and life sciences information. PubMed is independent of any publishing house and includes 5,200 Medline journals, as well as life science journals from PubMed Central. PubMed Central has quality standards, or PubMed has quality standards that Journals must meet in order to be indexed, but if a journal falls below these standards, it is not removed from the indexing. And again, all of the journals indexed in PubMed are also in Web of Science and Scopus. And again, this is just the slide shows you how you can create a list of potential journals based on a search for your topic. Okay, the last one is Google Scholar. It indexes many disciplines and sources, including articles, theses, books, abstracts, court opinions from academic publishers, professional societies, online repositories, universities, and other websites. Google Scholar is independent of any publishing house and currently indexes around 389 million records. And that, again, that number grows each year. Google does not have any known quality standards that journals must meet in order to be indexed. And the scope of the journals indexed in Google Scholar is unclear. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about how you can search in some of these large citation indexes for journals to potentially publish in, we also, I want to point out that we have this researching and publishing in the Health Sciences Library Guide. This guide is created for the Medical Center Library, but I know that some other disciplines are probably on this workshop, or they've registered for this workshop. And so they can be applied to other disciplines as well. We have kind of three different categories in the Elevate Your Research. We talk about measuring your impact, signing up for an ORCID account, which we'll talk about later, and adopting open access. In the Organizing Your Research section, we talk about data management, planning, and using DMP tool, the UK Libraries Research Data Services, Open Science Framework, using EndNote, and starting a systematic review. So then publishing your research, we have the NIH public access policy, reporting guidelines, and avoiding predatory publishing. And we also have some of the journal selection tools. So these, it's again, under Publish Your Research, you'll see these journal selection tools. And so these are helpful for you to take your next step in trying to find potential journals. So here we do have some available here on the website. And then we also have on this slide, there's again a larger selection of journal selection tools. So again, these tools can be very helpful in matching you with the right journals for your research topic. Journal selection tools will require you to have a title, an abstract, and keywords. Usually you just have to have the abstract that's required. You don't necessarily have to have your title. So these tools often use a variety of natural language processing techniques to mine the text you enter for mentions of key concepts, and then matches the concepts to the content in the journals. So some of the companies or organizations who create these tools may store the text that you enter and monitor what results you clicked on. Typically, this information is used to improve the accuracy of the tool, and it's not, your data is not shared, and there's no directly identifying information. So let's take a look at Jane. Jane is the journal author name estimator. So Jane will ask us for an abstract, and then we'll search PubMed for similar journal articles. So again, PubMed includes about 5,600 Medline journal titles in biomedicine, along with many additional titles in PubMed Central. So you can see we have our article title, we have our abstract, and we have some keywords. So on this next slide, I've just popped my abstract into the Jane journal name estimator, and I clicked find journals. You can also use this to find authors and find articles, but what we're doing today is just looking for the journals. So then Jane first searches for the 50 articles that are most similar to your input. So it really does matter what you, oops, sorry, I clicked on the slide. It really does matter what you input for it to decide what results it spits back out. So the similarity scores of all the articles belonging to a certain journal or an author are summed to calculate the confidence score for that journal or author. So the results are ranked by confidence score. And also included in the results are the journal's article influence score. So you can, Jane is one that we recommend a lot to users. It's not associated with a publishing company, so it's independent. So the next one is Elsevier Journal Finder. So obviously it is associated with Elsevier, and it's only going to find Elsevier titles. So again, if you go to this, the Elsevier Find Journals tool, you type and paste in your abstract. You can put a title, although it's not required. So the Journal Finder uses smart search technology and field of research specific vocabularies to match your paper to a scientific journal. So the functionality of Elsevier, there's a lot of really kind of cool things that you can do when you get your Find Journals list. You can filter it based on time to first decision or time to publication. You can filter it by impact factor. So it's showing I have 40 journals matching the paper, but then if I use these filters, it would narrow or broaden. Okay, so then the next thing to do is it's finally just a good time to ask a mentor if they know of any journals that you should consider. And also, if you haven't found many good options at this point, you might ask a librarian for recommendations for any topic-specific databases that you can mine journal titles for. So things like CINAHL or PsycInfo. Okay, so now that we've found a list of journals to review, we need to gather some information to help better determine which journals we should submit to. So some of the options to consider are whether a journal matches your research topic, the readership of the journal, author guidelines, and open access and article processing fees. So the readership of the journal can include what you want, who you want to reach, and the journal publisher venue, which is being regularly read by researchers in your field. Some considerations that may help you determine the readership are to read the scope and aims of the journal. Do these match your research topic? Review past issues of the journal. What types of topics has the journal covered? Review biographies of the editorial board. Do they express research areas that are relevant to your work? Or consider your own reading habits. Have you or your mentor read articles published in this journal? So next up, we want to familiarize ourselves with the article types published by journals and any specific guidelines. So each journal provides author instructions or submission guidelines. These guidelines cover the journal's purpose, scope, and the types of articles a journal publishes, any page restrictions, the number of figures and tables allowed, and any other requirements that you need to keep in mind. So if you plan to publish a case report or a specific type of review or any other special type of research, you would want to review the types of articles the journal accepts to see if you can find those types of articles recently published in the journal to make sure the journal is a good fit for your work. So most author guidelines are easily found on the journal's homepage. So finally, we want to determine if our journal is a subscription-based journal or an open access journal. So open access is a set of principles that makes research outputs openly available, free of cost and other access barriers. So there's many versions of open access journals available, and they're usually described in different colors. So I'm not going to read this. I'm going to leave it on the screen for a minute, but I'm not going to read it to you. I am going to go to the next slide and talk about the UK Library's open access fee discounts. So while some open access journals don't charge a fee, for publishing with them, others do. So this page aims to inform University of Kentucky authors of open access journals that provide a discount for their article processing charges, thanks to the University of Kentucky Library's membership or journal subscriptions. So on this page, this link, this open access research guide, we have this discounts page. And here you can find all of the discounts that are available for if you publish in one of these journals. We also have, for BMJ case reports, we have a fellowship code that covers the charges for APCs, and you can email McLib for more information about that. So round two, considerations, quality. So evaluating the reputation of a journal or publisher, inclusion and indexing services, evaluating a journal's impact in the discipline, and the quality of peer review. This is what we're going to talk about next. So several industry initiatives exist to maintain transparency and ethical standards among journals and publishers. And these initiatives can help us in determining a journal's reputation. So the Committee on Publication Ethics, or COPE, provides advice and guidance on the best practices for dealing with ethical issues in journal publishing, aimed primarily at editors and publishers. Journals and publishers can become members of COPE and show that they intend to follow the highest standards of publication ethics. So you can search the COPE member list and see if your journal or publisher is a member of COPE. The Directory of Open Access Journals is an independent index of fully open access journals with a mission to increase the visibility, accessibility, and reputation of open access scholarly research journals. So journals must apply for membership, and those that meet the minimum criteria are added to the directory. So journals that meet all 7 criteria additionally receive a DOAJ seal, which has been awarded to about 10% of the journals indexed in the DOAJ. Journals can be removed from the directory if they cease publishing, are no longer adhering to the best practices, have not published enough articles in a calendar year, or for suspected editorial misconduct. So you can search the DOAJ to see if your journal or publisher is in the directory. So these are some good sites for you to look at to make sure that you have a reputable journal. Again, there's several other industry groups that have similar initiatives to COPE and DOAJ. One that takes a slightly different approach is the Retraction Watch, which provides news stories about retracted articles and has a fully searchable database so that you can learn about the retractions issued by journals of your interest. So I subscribe to the Retraction Watch email list, so I can get an email of journals that have been retracted. So that's a really good one just for a different perspective. So it's a good one to take a look at. So next up, we need to look at whether a journal is indexed in a major database. So which is really incredibly important for increasing the visibility of the journal and in disseminating your research to a wide audience. So databases generally have selection criteria, and journals must meet those in order to be indexed. So you can see here in this graph, this chart on the page, it does, each one has different requirements for the selection process criteria. And then it tells you if there is a reevaluation process or not. And again, if it's indexed in, if your journal is indexed in one of these major databases, you're going to get more visibility as an author. So with the rise in open access publishing, there has been a rise in what is called predatory publishing. So I don't know about you all, if you publish, if you just publish a little or publish a lot, you've probably gotten an unsolicited email asking you to publish with a journal, and it's questionable what they're asking for you to do. These journals and publishers solicit articles and abstracts from researchers through actions that exploit the pressure on researchers to publish and present their work. So features of the practice include, but aren't limited to, rapid pay-to-publish models without vigorous or sometimes any peer review, fake editorial boards, falsely listing respected scientists, fraudulent impact factors and metrics. Journal titles are deceptively similar to the legitimate ones, and paid review articles that promote fake science. So the list kind of goes on. So in order to make sure that you're not falling susceptible to this predatory publishing industry, it's really important to do your diligence to minimize your risk for using predatory outlets. So there's a website called Think, Check, Submit, and it's a tool that will help you discover what you need to know when assessing a publisher if it's suitable for your research. So journal metrics can be used to measure and compare and rank journals in research areas. So journal metrics don't measure the quality of research published in a journal, and the best way to do that is by providing the peer review of the journal's contents. However, the journal metrics can help distinguish journals that are important to particular fields or consider the top resource in particular fields. So we did a research workshop series, a research workshop last week on measuring impact. It was bibliometrics, and it talks a lot about impact factors and SciVal and some other tools to measure impact. So I would suggest that you watch that video recording. I've linked to the recording here to look at the presentation, or you can look at the past recordings webpage for the slides. So I'm going to, since we've already, I had this in the slides, but we're going to kind of skip over it and talk about the importance of peer review. So peer review is used to assess the quality of a manuscript before it is published. Peer reviewers are independent researchers with expertise in a relevant research area that review the manuscript for originality, validity, and significance, and to help editors determine whether the manuscript should be published in their journal. So there's different types of review. And so there's the single, double, open peer, and transparent peer. And again, we want to make sure that the journal or publisher that you're reviewing has good information about the type of review that it uses on their website. So when you're trying to select a journal to publish in, if it doesn't mention peer review, or if it's very limited information, you might reconsider if you want to publish in that particular journal or not. And so round 3 considerations is timeline. So our final round is to just kind of look at the timeline the journals use, the likelihood of it being accepted, the time from submission to first notice, and then whether the journal participates in a journal transfer system. So journals acceptance rate can be interpreted differently by journals. Some may use the total number of manuscripts received as a base for the percentage calculation, or others will only count the reviewed manuscripts as the base number. In addition, the acceptance rate may change from month to month depending on the number of papers in the submission system. In addition, the acceptance rate is size dependent. So for example, the acceptance rate for a journal that receives 1,000 submissions per month shouldn't be considered the same as a journal that receives 50 submissions per month. The mean time span from submission to publication varied from 91 to 639 days. And some journals are now offering accelerated publication for selected biomedical journals to coordinate the publishing schedule with conferences, drug approvals, and drug launches. However, those costs can be substantially higher for the article processing fees. So it's really good to take a look at, it's really good to know these timelines and be aware of them. So if you're trying to publish quickly, or if you have a deadline, these things need to be taken into consideration when you're selecting a journal. papers get rejected for all kinds of reasons, and it might be that the reviewer thinks it's a great paper, but it just doesn't fit the journal scope. So if your journal is a part of a journal transfer network, then the editors can refer rejected articles to a suitable journal or another relevant journal within the same publisher. So once the paper has been referred, the author can choose whether to transfer their manuscript to the new journal. And if they decide to take the opportunity to transfer their manuscript, typically then it is an automatic transfer process to receive the journal submission system. So the receiving journal can then undertake its own editorial evaluation, which may include sending it out for peer review again to determine whether it's suitable for further consideration. So this is something to consider when you're selecting your journal. Does it include the journal transfer system? And so now I'm just going to kind of go over a checklist for creating and reviewing journals. So first, you need to find a list of journals. You can search for journals in Scopus, Web of Science, or PubMed, and then use the journal selection tools such as Jane. Consider the journals match to your needs. Read the journal scope and review past article titles. Read author guidelines and types of articles. Check if the journal is open access and if it has a fee. Check to see if the library, UK libraries, will cover that article processing fee. Then you evaluate the journal's quality and reputation. You can check the journal for COPE and DOAJ standards. Determine if it's indexed in PubMed, Web of Science, or Scopus. Identify the journal's impact factor using journal citation reports. And then read about the journal's peer review practices. And then finally, you want to consider the journal's timelines, find likelihood of it being accepted using the journal selection tools, review the time from submission to first notice or publication, and consider whether the journal participates in a journal transfer system. So all of these things can be taken into account when you're trying to identify a journal for publication. So some of the other things that you need to be aware of and that you might want to use to help disseminate your scholarly output would be to use UK Knowledge, create and use an ORCID ID, and then track scholarly citations by setting up alerts in Scopus. So UK Knowledge is our digital repository. So if you have published in a subscription-based journal, or you have a conference or a poster but it's not a publishable item, you might want to consider uploading it to UK Knowledge. It's our repository. If you have open access articles, you might want to consider depositing them in UK Knowledge as well. So it disseminates your work to a wider audience, and it also provides a citable link and easy access to your work. It will store your research in a central and searchable database, and it will also ensure long-term preservation of your work. So if you've already published in a subscription-only journal, but you want to make your work open access, you might be able to upload a version of the manuscript to UK Knowledge. So in order to determine if your journal article can be uploaded into UK Knowledge, you need to do the following. So check your publishing agreement and see if it allows for uploading of it to a digital repository. Which version do you need can be uploaded? Usually it's like a final draft. It's not the publisher's final edited copy. Check to see if you need to put an embargo on it. And for how long, and then check to see what type of license. Usually it's a Creative Commons license that needs to be applied as well. So you can find all of this information out on the Sherpa Romeo guidelines. So, and this is linked here. That's how you can check the publisher's agreement. And then we're almost done. A couple of other things. Author name disambiguation. This is a huge issue in the scholarly publishing world. Of more than 6 million authors in a major journal citation and abstract database, approximately 2/3 shared a last name and initial name with another author. So, for example, my maiden name was Stephanie Smith, so super common. My name now is Stephanie Henderson, still super common. So you want to make sure that you kind of disambiguate your name by using something like ORCID ID. So if you don't have this, if you don't have an ORCID ID, I would highly suggest that you get one. It's a persistent digital identifier, and it has an online profile that you can sign up for. It doesn't matter whether you change institutions, whether you change your name, or even change your research field. It's your own distinguishable ID that will help people discover your work and also give you credit for the work that you have done. So there's information on our research guide to help you set up an account. It's a very simple process. You can also take your ORCID account and then search for your name in Scopus, and then you can tie your ORCID account to your Scopus record. And so what will happen is you'll have a Scopus author profile with your ORCID account, and they'll be connected. And then you can set up alerts to let you know when someone else has cited your work. So if you do those two things, that will kind of help you get to more information about how people are using your work, if your work is being cited. And then also when you if you're in Scopus and you create your account and you try to link it to your ORCID account, it will ask you, do you want to link all these other people that may have a similar name? So then you can make sure that you're not you're not missing out on some of the work that you have already done. So you want to make sure that all of your work is tied to your ORCID ID and not just disparately out in the universe. All right, so thank you for your time this afternoon. I really appreciate you all spending it with me and letting me explain to you a little bit more about the publishing process and how to find reputable journals. If you have questions, my email address is on the slide. The Med Center Library email is on the slide as well. And then if you're not in that subject area for the Med Center, there's a link to all of the subject liaisons, and you can also reach out to them for any questions about anything that we've covered today. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask them.